Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Right, I'm just going to do this one is a short video. You don't need any reference photographs for this one, so all you really need is a small piece of paper here, or watercolor paper, or whatever your favorite or preferred surface is for doing your colour pencil work. And I've drawn on it a circle. You could draw a square or some shape, or not even bother with a shape. And then what I've done on this side is I've listed the colours that we're going to use today, or they are suggested colours. Depending on the type of fur or what animal fur you've got, colours may slightly change depending on whether you want a warm colour or a cool colour. And today we're going to be doing some short brown fur. So it's a short-haired dog that I've just not long since done as a commission. I've just taken the snippet off, it's just off like the top of his head. So it's got quite a few different textures in there, colours and whatever. So I'm going to use that as my reference for today, but you could use any sort of reference. All I'm basically going to show you today are the techniques of how to do the fur and what's involved. So it covers several techniques like layering, which is one of the basic techniques you really need if you're doing coloured pencils. So I will be doing another tutorial on actual layering, but you'll get the gist of it through this anyway. And it's one that you use in every piece of pencil work that you do. The other one is pencil pressure and how that can affect your work. And then also we're going to be covering some parts of what we call glazing. So like I say, if we look at this, we've got the actual fur, the fur strokes as well. But then we've also, if you look at it very carefully, you've got some sort of orangey or terracotta tones in there. You've got some blue, hints of blues. And in these lightish or these shadowy areas, it's like a purpley mauvey colour. So what we'll do with those is once we've built the colour up, we will actually just glaze a hint of them, because we don't want to drown the picture and put some false colours in as such. It's just a glaze because it's the way the light hits the fur. So I'll show you how we glaze with coloured pencils as well. So first of all, I've drawn a circle, but as I say, you don't need to do that if you don't want to. I'll get a list. I'll tell you the list of colours. Now I've used polychromos for this particular one, but you use whatever pencils you've got. So these are sort of suggestions. They're not set in stone, but these are the sort of colours that you would need if you wanted to be doing a nice rich sort of chestnutty brown dog with short fur. So we've got a warm grey one, or you could change that and you could use it as an ivory, depending on what your favourite kind of base coat colour is. I switch between ivory and the warm and cold grey. So for this particular one, I'm going to use a warm grey one and a cold grey one, which is number 270 or 230 in the polychromos range. As I say, if you've got some greys of your own, they're both lightish greys. One's a warmer one, one's a cool one. We've got Nugget, which is a lightish brown. It's quite a cool brown actually. We've got the go-to pencil, as I call it, the one that I use a lot of, which is the Sepia. Sometimes if I'm doing an image, I use that to draw the image out with very lightly. So that's 175 in the range, and the Nugget is 178. We have got a Walnut Brown, which again is another, this now we're starting to pick up the browns that we will be using. So this is another brown. This is one of the darker browns, and that's number 177. We've got Burnt Sienna, which is a nice warm brown. So we're using that in a lot of the warmer areas, and it's a reddy brown because the brown we're doing is sort of a chestnutty colour. So it's a reddy brown. So that one's Burnt Sienna, which is 283. Then we've got the Carpet Mortem Violet. So that's a sort of a reddy browny purpley colour, and that's number 263. And then these three here are what I explained earlier, which are the glaze colours that we're going to use. So you can see a hint of this blue, the Delft blue. Now it looks quite bright and blue on here, but obviously when we're going to be putting it on top of other colours, it won't quite look that bright. Then we've got the Manganese Violet, which is another good one for sort of shadowy areas. But as I say, you could use any other kind of purple if you wanted to. But that one's quite good. And then I've used out of the orangey colours, you've got sanguine or something like that. But I've used the terracotta, which is 186, and the Manganese Violet is 160, and the Delft Blue 141. That's in the Polychromos range. But you know, you use whatever colours you feel. It's the important thing today is not about the colours that we're going to be using, it's the techniques and how to achieve the fur. So you could do it in any sort of colours that you want. The first thing I'm going to run through with you is the actual fur technique that I use mostly. And on short fur, this is a fantastic technique. Sometimes I change it. I change how I do it when I'm doing the longer fur, but for the short fur, the short basic fur, this is a good technique. Okay, so let me just put that to one side. So I'll fetch this in here. So I've done a little bit of it, but I'll go through it again with you. So I'll do it using a darker pencil. So we'll use the, I've got the carpet mounted, no, I'll not use that one. I've got the burnt sienna, and then we'll also use sepia, which is a dark colour as well. Okay. So underneath we'll have had the base layer. So I'll tell you what, let me just put a small base layer down of the grey. So I'm shading here. So I'm holding, now the key to this is to hold your pencil quite far back. So I'm not close up there, a bit further up the barrel like that. So because you're holding your pencil there, when you're doing like backwards and forwards, what we call shading strokes like this, very lightly, because as I say, pencil work is essentially built up by using lots and lots of light layers, but we do occasionally change the pressure. But to start with, we're doing very light layers. So by going backwards and forwards and holding the barrel quite far back, you won't see much of that pencil matter because it's a grey. You are creating a nice even coverage, but very light pressure. Now, the further back you hold it, the harder you'll find it to actually put pressure through the pencil. So actually putting more pressure on isn't that easy. But when you hold your pencil like this, you could tend to do your pressure too strong. Line it, you've got, I mean, okay, you've got a bit more control, but as I say, the secret of good pencil work is lots of light layers and patience. So you do need the light layers to start with. So holding your pencil like this further back is quite essential for this. Okay, so hold your pencil back. Some light layers backwards and forwards, just a shading motion. So we're just actually covering. So that would be my base coat. This is one of the base colours that I use. This is the cold grey one. Okay, so I've coloured a bit of a base area there. Okay, so now I'm going to go in, I'm going to use this burnt sienna. So say I was just putting my first coat down would be burnt sienna. So I'm going to follow exactly the same process as I've just done with the light grey. Because we've put the light grey down, it's covered quite a bit of the texture surface. So we've got quite a bit of the gaps filled in with the grey. So now we're going to go on with the first sort of colour of fur. So I'm going to use the burnt sienna. So again, I'm holding a pencil. I mean, this one's in a pencil extender, just so, but you treat it just like a normal pencil. So I'm holding it quite far back. And again, I'm just doing very light pressure. Now you can see that one a little bit more. So that is very light pressure. I'm not putting hard pressure on at all. I want light pressure. And I'm doing a shading motion. Now, obviously, I'm going up and down here, but whatever subject I would be doing, if it's an animal especially, you have fur or the skin texture or feathers or whatever, and they go in certain directions. Well, that is what you've got to do. When you're shading, you would follow the form of direction, as they say. So you would follow whichever way the fur line is going. I'm just going to put a couple of coats on here. So you've got 1, 2. So I'm using the same pressure on each layer. I'm not increasing it at all. So it's very light pressure, but you can see the saturation of the colour is building up by each layer. You can see it's getting slightly darker. Okay. So this is what I mean by layering as well. You're just layering lots of light layers up. Okay. Going back and forth like that. So if we've got more colours on there, so normally you would build that up with lots of different browns to get the different colours in there and create depth. Okay, and then once you've done that, what the best thing you could do is we're going to blend. You would blend with a pencil, or some people use solvent, but I am not really a fan of the solvent method. But I would use a white pencil to blend that. Now, when I use a white pencil to blend, I'm not putting any extra pressure on. I would treat it just the same as I've treated this pencil on the other pencil. It would be very light layers, and it would just be so forget a white pencil here. So I'm holding the pencil far back again. I'm just doing light layers backwards and forwards. And what that does, that you can see, you probably won't see it as much on here, but when you're actually working it, what you'll see, it lightens the colour because it's another pencil colour and it's a white, but it actually smooths the work out. So what you would do then is the pencil you used before, once you've done that layer there and blended the colours in, if you do another light layer, exactly the same, holding your pencil back, and do another light layer with the colour that you used before, you can see the difference there, the light and the darker colour. What you're going to do is fetch back that saturation of colour. Okay, but it's going to look a bit smoother. Okay, so that's there. So then you've got, you know, your basic layer of fur, or down your starting point for doing the fur. So now I'm going to go into a darker pencil. And what we're trying to create now is these fur lines. Now you can see I've done quite a few here. Now the main points you've got to think about when you're doing this is the length of fur. So if you're doing a very short-haired dog, then you want tiny strokes. And then the other one is you don't want them, you don't want right thick lines. When you see fur, it's sort of where it's on the skin. If you put your pencil down, so it was on the skin, and then go up with lightish pressure, and then just flick your pencil off, lift it off. So if you were doing long hair, you could go like, you could do a lot longer strokes like that, pen down like that. And what you'll find is by doing that fairly loosely, you've got this, so the edges are sort of naturally thinning out and fading out, which is good for fur. And then also you'll notice some of them that cross over, which again is natural. The one thing you don't want to be doing is that, because that isn't fur, that's just lines. And also the parallel, you don't want to be getting them parallel. So if you can, if you can move about in the area that you're doing, you will get your fur and build it up, the texture up by building clumps of lines up like this. You will get a natural looking fur. So let's say if you're doing it on here, so if we were doing a darker hair, pen down, lift it up, and you'll see I'm turning my pencil as well just to keep the point sharp. I mean, for this to work as well, you need a really nice sharp point on your pencil. So if you look, I'm putting the fur lines all over. I'm not just sticking in a line, I'm doing them all over. Now, where you come to a darker section, where you've got quite a dark section on your fur, you just clump your lines closer together like that. And then as you come out, say this area was a little bit lighter, then you reduce your pressure, but also don't group them as close together. And then you could go to a darker area, a much darker area here as well. Okay, so you're creating the darker areas, and then these are the lighter areas, but they will still have little bits of fur in them. So that's the basic fur technique, okay, of how you build your fur up. Now, as I say, we're going to be using layers, different colours. So we're going to build up texture and depth in this. So that's your little, so just practice on a piece of card before you start, if you feel, just to loosen. I mean, I do this before I start a commission, simply just to loosen up. You know, it's just not, you don't just naturally pick up a pencil, and you know, it is good just to keep your hand in, just sort of do a couple of, if you're doing an animal or a dog, if you're doing fur strokes, I tend to just get a scrap bit of paper, give myself a couple of minutes just doing this with the fur strokes, and it just gets me my fingers and my hands loosened up, ready for doing the work that I'm going to be doing. Okay, so that's my little play card for the fur method. Okay, so you've got your basic coat there, and then you could just build that up with more and more colours. Right then, so let's get back to our piece. So I've got a circle on here. I've got, so this was actually a puppy, the little chestnut brown pup, Labrador pup, really nice gooey eyes. And this section here, I've cropped off from the top of the head. So his eyes are coming down here. Okay, so I've just cropped this off so you can, so it gives me, because it's got some nice different tones of brown in here. And I love this sort of chocolatey brown. It's quite a rich brown. Okay, so this is what we're going to try and replicate. So you can see it's really, really dark here. Then we've got some bluey tones here. Got some dark patches in, and then we've got some lighter tones here with some red marks, red in them. And if you look, we've also got a glaze up here of the like terracotta and down here. Okay, so that's with some warm. So I've got a reference guide just to guide me. They just for the colouring really. But as I say, it's entirely up to you. So this is the short fur. Now I'm doing it in the browns, and I've got some suggested colours here for brown. But the technique we're doing today would be exactly the same for short black fur, short white fur, ginger, whatever fur, as long as it's short fur. Only thing that would change would be the colours. The technique would be the same. Okay. So if anybody wants to know what sort of recommended colours are for say white fur or what, I can always do. I mean, I will be doing some videos on them, but you can always ask and I can always send you a list. I'm quite happy for that. But again, it's better if you sort of judge yourself. You can do that in there's several ways to sort your colours out. You could use a paint program to do that. Do it by eye, or if you've got your swatches that you've done from what I recommend you do for every, you know, for the colour pencils that you have, you could run your swatch across there and see if you can find the colours. So there's several ways of finding the colours out, or as near to. And if you haven't got the exact colour, just have a look at it and just learn to mix the colour. So messing about with your coloured pencils as well and getting to know them is an advantage when it comes to picking colours. Right, let's crack on. So the other colour that I've missed off here is the white, which is what I always use, and that's for blending. Now you can mix and match pencils as well. So if you've got so many of the colours in the Polychromos, some in the Light Fast, or you've got some in the Artist range, or some in the Luminance range, you can mix them. There's not a problem with that at all. You can mix the colours. Okay, right then, I am going to start. So what I'm going to start with, I've got a nice sharp point. This is my warm grey one, which is number 270 in the Polychromos range. A few marks on there. So I'm going to start, I'm going to hold my pencil quite far back towards the end of the barrel. Now I'm looking at the first thing I am going to do is, because I'm going to be doing a shading motion, but as I said before, I want it to go in the direction of form, as we say. So if we look closely, we've got that way up there, and then it sort of spans out and it comes. So sort of fanning out basically up to the top. Okay, so that's the direction that I'm going to be going in. So I want to start about here. Now I'm just doing very light pressure and I'm going all over this circle. And as you can see, I'm changing my direction to follow the direction of form. Okay, get out the way. So as we come up the middle, I'm just doing light pressure. So you're going to struggle to see this on this first layer. Okay, so I'm coming up here, so come up to the top, and then as I'm coming round, I'm more or less following. So you know, if you've got a circle, it's quite easy if you've drawn a circle, because you're sort of following like a fan shape. So here I'm coming in that direction, like that, all the way around here. So just keep looking at your reference photograph and just make sure, then straighten it up here and then back round this side, coming round that way there. So it fans out in the other direction here. Okay, so I'm doing shaded motion, just backwards and forwards, light pressure. I'm just trying to get as much of the tooth covered as I can, very lightly. And this will help the other colours adhere nicely. And by following this direction of form, you're actually creating depth and texture in your picture right from the start. Okay, so I've gone over that maybe twice. So I filled the circle with a warm grey. Don't know if you can see that. Just slightly different colour to the paper, but not much. Now I'm going to concentrate. I'm going to get my cold grey one. Got my pencil sharpener here. Now I'm using one of the Derwent mini sharp crank at the moment. I do have an electric one, but that's in my studio at the shop at the moment. These are a little bit more transportable, so for home I fetch one of these home. Okay, nice sharp point. Okay, and now all I'm going to do is I'm going to do exactly the same. I'm holding the pencil far back. I'm doing backwards and forwards motion, and I'm going over where I went with the warm grey one. I'm going over now with the cool grey one. So what we'll end up with is a nice neutral light base of a very light grey. And as I say, the intention for this is to just basically get some coverage over on the grain of the paper. Again, I'm following the direction that the fur is working. Okay, keep turning your pencil now and then. That keeps your point sharp. So I don't know if you still see this colour as well. This colour is quite hard. I mean, I can see it here, but with the camera you might find it a little bit difficult. But that shows you how light the layers are. You can see it there, look, just slightly, but it is a light pressure. And as I say, you have to have patience to build your layers up to get this right. I mean, you could put harder pressure on and do less layers, but it isn't necessarily going to be right because it might not look as though it's got enough depth in there. Now, everybody knows when you're working and you're doing a fur or an animal, the depth is because it's like your hair on your head. You've got people that've got thick hair and people that've got thin hair, and that's what you're trying to achieve, is the depth of the fur. Right then, again, I've got a brush here. I'm just cleaning off any debris. Make sure that paper's kept clean at all times. Okay, so that's the two what we call base layers. Now base layers are, you could use an ivory if you want. It's everybody's own personal choice. I mean, I think I got into using these because I use them as a base layer for white, because nothing is ever, you know, as white as you think it is. And these two make a nice base layer for white, but then I found that they seem to work for most colors that I use anyway. As I say, with brown, some people do choose to use the ivory or a cream, which is fine. There's not any hard fast rule with that. Coloring is your own choice and its preference. So that's my base layers done. So now we're going to move on and start to use these colors here. So we're going to use the browns, all the different browns in there. So the first one I would be using is going to be the Nugget. So this is number 178. So this is the lightest of the browns. It's sort of, I call it a grey brown, really. It is brown, but it's got a hint of a grey colour in there. Okay, so this is going to act as my base layer for the fur. So I'm going to go in now, and I'm actually going to start making some fur lines, but not quite as defined as we will do in later layers. So I'm looking very carefully now. So the first thing I'm going to look at is the actual reference. Okay, so looking at this reference, as I said, we've got the darker patch here. So where I have got dark patches, I will be doing the strokes and I will be putting them closer together and clumping them and grouping them so that it's dark. And then as we come into the lighter areas and lighter sections, then I will sort of space them out a lot more. And then we've got smaller areas here again where we've got some dark shadows. Okay, so that's what we're doing at the moment. We're breaking this down into shapes and colours and tones. So we know it's going to be quite dark here. So I'm going to start here. Now I'm going to put this nugget more or less all over. Again, I'm holding the pencil quite far back. As you can see, I'm grouping. I'm doing the fur lines, pencil down, lift and off. Again, following the shape of form. So watching which direction I'm going. Okay, so I'm grouping these quite close together here because this is the darker section. Okay, that. Again, I'm using very light pressure, but you can see I'm just putting up sort of fur lines in there. I'll slow down a little bit for you. So pencil down, lift and up. It's almost like you can use your wrist action really to do it. Okay. You don't have to do them as fast as this, you can slow them down. And if you look, I keep lifting the pencil, and what I'm doing is I'm actually turning it because I want to keep the point as sharp as possible for as long as possible. If you keep it just on one side, it will, I mean, that's already started to wear down on one side there. You can wear the pencil down on one side, which is not what we want. So I'm more or less covering all of this. Now, I'm not putting as many pencil strokes here because it's getting a bit lighter as we come up here. And it's turning, so it's sort of coming out of this. I'm looking at my reference, it's coming out of the, so we're coming up and round, so it's coming out of the circle there. Okay, so that's coming round. And then all the way back up here. Round to this side. Occasionally you can do it the other way where you put the pencil down and pull it towards you. So you sort of, again, adding depth. So that way, and then you can also come in that way as well on the odd occasion. Okay, so you can see now how we're getting this fan area. And that's all I'm going to do now with this. So we're going all over with this. And again, keep looking at your reference. So this section here is coming out that way. Okay. A bit more there. Sections in there. Now cover the whole circle now. Now this might look like long fur to you, but because we're doing it in a smaller circle, it is actually, if you looked at the actual animal, it's short. So, okay, so I'm just now, that's going to come up there. Okay, start spreading out that way a little bit. Okay. So I'm holding my pencil quite far back. If you look, I haven't got sort of specific lines of colour. They are all different. You know, they're not just one length. They are all shorter bits of fur. So that's what it's about, because it is short fur. Okay, so that comes around that side there because that's coming off the paper there. And then it's coming round here. Once I've got this basic layer in here, it's going to look pretty much even. Because I say the nugget will also act as the sort of lightest brown colour that we've got on there as well. Just give it a quick swoop with some with a brush. Check your pencil in case you need to sharpen it again. You can see it's just starting to wear flat on one side. There, look, which, you know, it does happen. So now I'm fetching back my reference photograph a little bit here. So I know I need this bit a bit darker, so I'm going to use the same pencil. I'm just going to do another layer. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go over where all the dark areas are first. So we've got this patch here. But remember, you've got to filter them into these lighter areas. It's not a straight line. You don't want to be going like that. You'll get an hard looking edge. So feather them in, coming up there. So around there, and then we've got a little dark patch here. Then we've got a darker patch coming up here. Got some little darker areas here. And then here's quite a lot darker here. So this is what you sort of do before you do each layer. Double check what you're doing with your reference photograph and where you're going. So this is why I suggest when you're doing an animal, if you work on one section at a time and work the way through looking for shapes, colour and depth. And then by the time you get round everywhere, you should have, it's like a jigsaw puzzle and it should all fit together nicely. Okay, so I'm going to now do where really dark areas are. I'm going to go back over with the Nugget first and just sort of, so that will give us a nice sort of layout of where the darker areas are. So I'm just looking. So here's really dark. So pencil down, lift and group them together here. So you want to group them quite tight together here. So you're building that strength up there and that darkness up in this section here. So you can see it's, we're going to be having a little bit, but we don't want to go too dark too soon because we've got other colours. So now you'll see I'm looking, if you see when I stop with the pencil, I'm just double checking on a reference. Okay, so I'm going to fade them. So as I'm fading them into the lighter areas, I'm lifting off some pressure, and also I'm not putting as many. So also here is where it gets a darker patch here coming up. If you see, I'm pulling these ones down. So this section here is a bit lighter, but you can see it's all starting to flow. Still got some of the nugget in there, but not as close together. Okay, so we've got a bit of a darker patch here. And it goes off light again. Okay, so come in here. This is all quite dark as it comes up. Okay. And then as we come round here, it's quite dark. So it's the same pressure, but because it's already got colour on there and we're layering and we're putting more colours down, more layers down, you see it building up. I mean, it's still nowhere near where we're going to be. But now you can, once you get sort of past, a lot of people get scared till they get past this sort of section where once things are mapped in and they can actually see where they're going, it does become a lot easier. Right then, so we've got some darker patches up here. Okay. So close together and then pull off as you come into a lighter area, like that. And then this section here, got quite a few bits of lighter areas. And come back into this dark. And then within the darker sections, you will also see other colours. So this is where we will change change this section, it won't look so, I mean, at the moment it just looks flat, but we've got a darker section here. Comes up here, so quite a few clumps together there, and down here, and then back off of the paper at that side. We've got this light area here, and then I've got a few little dark sections here, and maybe one. I mean, this is not going to be exact to this reference, but it's to give you the idea of, if you look there. So I've got quite a bit of light here at the top, which is fine because that's sort of like the top of the head there, which always gets the light hitting it. Okay, so you can roughly see where these dark patches now are going to appear. Okay, and then these are going to be the lighter colours in between. So once we've done that, so that's 2 layers of the nugget. The nugget, the first layer was all over more or less, so it was an evenish colour all over. And then the second layer, we've gone in and determined where the dark patches are going to be. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm taking the white, again holding the pencil back, and again just using light pressure, and I'm just going to go over. Now I'm doing this with a shading motion. Now, because we're using the light pressure, it's not going to wipe out those fur lines that you've put in. But the one thing you'll notice as you go in, I mean, still follow the direction of form. But what you'll see is that you are actually blending these colours. What it's doing, it's going into the tooth of the paper. But we don't want to destroy the tooth of the paper because we need to put a lot more layers in. If you put too much pressure on too soon, what it does, it flattens the tooth of the paper and you can't get any more layers on, or very few extra layers on. So, but because we're blending now and not actually creating fur with the white, I am just doing it in a shading motion. And what you'll see is it softens out the fur lines, but without losing the fur lines. It might lighten your picture a little bit because, as I say, you're using a white. If you don't want to use a white, you can always just use any other light pencil that's included in the colour range that you're using. But most of the time I do sometimes use other colours as well, but I do mostly use the white. Okay, so that's blended those 2 layers in. But so we've had the base layers, which were 1, 2, 3, about 4 layers. Then we've got 2 more, so that's 6 layers on there already. And then I've just blended the ones with the white. Okay, get rid of all the residue. Okay, so the next colour we're going to be looking at is, I'm going to look at, right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back into these really dark areas, and I'm going to use the Walnut Brown now. But I'm also going to put some of the bits in the lighter areas. So this is where you'll start to see where we now put the colours, the clumps close together, and then we'll come out just slightly to blend it into, or to mix it and sort of connect up the darker areas with the lighter areas. Okay, so this is where you will start to see it darken a bit. So now I'm actually going to do some strokes that are a little bit shorter. I'm actually now starting to define the fur lines a little bit more seriously now. So again, I just keep looking at the reference photo. I'm holding the pencil not quite as far back as I have before. I'm just a little bit nearer, just so I can put that little bit extra pressure on, not too much. Keep turning the pencil. But I'm doing smaller strokes and more random, because I do want them to look random, so you can see where they look like they're crossing over. Now I'm coming into a light patch there in a bit, so I'm just going to concentrate on this darker patch here first. So you can see how much darker it's getting now with the using the Walnut Brown, but I'm still using light pressure, not too dark. Okay. In fact, I'm grouping them really more close together in the section here. There, I'm coming up here now. This is where you don't want a straight line coming around. You need it to look soft and fur-like. So again, just following the direction of form. Okay. So pencil down and lift. You'll find some of the lines crossing each other, which is fine. So come around here. So now I'm coming into this lighter area here. So I'm actually going to start. So I'm lifting off the pressure, and also I'm sort of spacing. So you're seeing a little bit of the brown going here, but it's not anywhere near as dark as there. And then here is where we've got another bit of the darker area. So group them together a bit more there, and then I'm pulling it this way this time. So we've got a few bits in between there just to balance them out, but we've got the darker patch there. And then as I come around here, again, I'm just going to do some little light bits in there. So we've got some. Right, so this looks quite stripy when you get really close to it. Okay. Then here is where, so I've pulled off the pressure there, and then here is where, so I'm going to pull them back towards me this time. This is where we've got the darker patch here as well. Where we've got the real dark, I'm putting the strokes closer together. Like that. So can you see how that's building up? You can turn your paper around if it makes it that bit easier for you. And then just put a few lighter strokes in there. And then these are getting closer together again because there's a patch of the dark fur there. Like that. It lightens off again at the top here. We're starting to get this bit here is lighter. So take the pressure off, just put some more strokes in, but not as close, and less pressure. Okay. So we're coming around here. So we've got all these little patches of, very small patches of the darker colour. Okay. Use the pressure in the lighter areas. And then got some darker bits here. So clump the fur together a bit more. So it's pencil on, lift and off. So these bits here are faded as well. Okay. You can also just fetch them back in that way a little bit. I wouldn't suggest if these are going off and that's a lot lighter at the top, then obviously you want to be going that way. But then when you get to here, you can on the odd one just sort of pull it back in, because fur overlaps all the time. So you don't want it looking too, you need it to look blended and sort of, right, so this is quite a dark patch just here. You can see I'm doing so many strokes that way and then so many that way, and it just smooths it out that little bit. Okay. So you can see now we're starting to get this fur built up a little bit. There we go. So I'm going to dust off a bit there. Okay. So I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually blend again, but I'm not going to blend with the white this time, because when you look at it, you've got this sort of like light purple glow in there, purpley blue glow. Okay, so if you use a grey, a light grey, and you go over those sort of areas where you've got the, and then you've had the white and the brown, you'll get that nice sort of lighter glow. So it's not a white. So I'm using the cold grey one for this. I'm using light pressure again, holding the pencil. I've gone back to holding the pencil quite far back. And I'm just doing shading strokes like that. And I'm just sort of blending these areas in now. I didn't want to lighten it too much either. So with the white, it would have lightened a little bit. I mean, I don't know if you can actually see there, but there is a difference between that side and that side. Only slight, which is fine, because that's what pencil work's about. It's doing the changes gradually and not too contrasted. We need a nice smooth look for the fur. Okay. So like I say, you can blend with other color pencils, and that's what I've just done here. It's a light one, and it's a grey. It's one that we've used in the base layer, so it's in there. So this is the cold grey one, and the cold grey one gives it more of the bluey look there. So I was aware of that. So rather than put white, I thought, well, we'll go in with the cold grey one. Okay, so that's another layer blended. Right, so let's have a look now at some of these other colour browns. So we've used the Nugget and we've used the Walnut Brown. So another one, this is one of my favourite pencils. We've got the burnt Sienna. So this is a nice reddy brown, and because this, if you look at this fur, it is quite a rich brown, and we've got quite a lot of the reddy colour brown here. So around this side and into the dark, and then up at the top here and round here, we've got some of this. Now, if your brown fur is a cooler fur, if it's more of a darker brown fur, you could use something like Van Dyke brown or burnt umber probably, or something like that. But this is a nice reddy brown, so this is a warm brown. It's in a pencil extender, quite sharp point. So again, what we're looking for, I'm going to hold it quite far back. And again, it's just repetitive, but what you should start to be seeing now is putting this red over. So where we've got the real dark section, these are the colours will become, sorry, these are the colours will be coming through, and you should now start to see that we're building up some depth within this fur. So now the red part comes out into the light area a bit more. So we've got this dark section here where we put the dark brown, but we've got a bit of the red. So what I'm doing is I'm clumping the reds a bit closer together as we come out just a bit further than the dark sections, if that makes sense. Okay, because what you've got is these dark sections here, which stop about there. They've got a bit of a red. So you've got the dark here, but you've still got this red just coming out here. Okay. So you can clump your red a little bit closer together as you're coming out of the browns as well. Like that. So wherever you see this nice, rich, reddy brown, this is where you want to be putting your burnt sienna. Now, this is where we start to sort of differentiate roughly where the colours are going to go. So this colour might not go everywhere. I mean, I'm looking at my fur now, and you see you've got this here, which is quite blue, so there's no reddy in it. So I'm not going to really put, I'm going to put the odd, like I said, I've released the pressure and put a little bit of colour in there, but not too much. But we've got the red round here, and we've got some of the red here as well. So I should be putting it in there. Okay. Red, so it's wherever you can see this really rich reddy colour. Keep checking your reference, and I've got this red. So even though this is a darker patch here at the top where it's lighter, we've got a little hint of the red. So when we put the burnt sienna on there, it's not going to look as vibrant there as what it is here, but you've got that red. Okay, we've got some red in here in these lighter areas, and then we've got quite a bit of red around this side. As I say, there's only a few patches where we haven't got this red, and that is sort of around this area here and this area here. We've got some of the red in here, so we still need to make sure we've got some in, but I mean, it has got a lot of the darker colours as well. Okay. And we've got some of the red up here. Okay, and that's where that turns a bit bluey. So I'm leaving that. So we've got that bit of red in there. Okay, we'll be going back to that again in a bit. Right, I'm going to go back now to the walnut brown, which is the darker brown. Just off any. And again, I'm just going to reinforce some of these darker areas. Okay, to this section here. And like I said, this section is darker there, but we've got some red patches around the outside. So, you know, constantly look at your reference photo. So now you can see this is really now starting to darken up lovely. And you can see all these colours collectively coming together. Still looking a bit grainy, but that's because of the need to keep layering and blending. Like I said, it's a slow process as such. Okay, so some darker areas here. Then I'm coming back in. So I'm lifting the pressure and putting the walnut brown in the lighter areas as well still. Okay, I'm just clumping them closer together where the darker areas are. And then lift the pressure and just put a few more spaced out. You still need to keep this area, it's light, but as this gets darker, that needs to be a little bit darker as well. So you are darkening both sections, it's just to what degree. Okay. Darker areas here. Okay. So now you can see it's starting to get more like, it's starting to look like fur now, and we're getting the tonal changes there. So I am now going to get, I've got the carpet Mortem Violet. So this is a colour that is quite a dark, it's a brown, but it's got a real nice purpley rich colour to it, which when you look at a dog of this colour, it's very much like this colour here, it's quite rich. So it is nice to put on. So I'm going to start and put this now where we got the reddy tones as well. So more or less everywhere where we went with the burnt sienna. Building up this nice dark patch here in the centre. Put a little bit more pressure through this pencil now. Not much more, just a little bit. Okay, so you can see I'm pulling that up and we're just getting this nice reddier tone, a nice, really rich tone this is. And again, just as we're coming out into the lighter areas, just release the pressure a bit and space out, but still put some strokes of fur in there. Okay, and then here. Put them close together again where your darker tones are. Keep turning your pencil. Keep the sharpness there. There we go, it's starting to really come together now. Just off Okay, so I'm now just going to go and give it another. I'm now just blending with the white, so very lightly in the direction of form, not much pressure, just blending this together. So blend, but you won't lose the fur lines as such. You'll see the colour and tone overall is a little bit lighter once you've got the white on there. That's fine. It's just filling in a little bit more of the tooth of the paper, and then we can darken it back up by putting another dark colour back on top. Okay. But every time you do a layer of blending, so I do suggest you have a couple of layers though before you blend each time. And then as you blend, the colour that you put on after that, it's a little bit smoother. It goes on a lot easier and it looks a lot smoother, but you still got that differential of the first strokes. Okay, so it's not now as grainy as what it was to start with. You'll notice it's taking, you know, this white is gradually, it's blending, but it's also filling in some of the tooth of the paper, but without destroying it, so that you can add more and more layers. Right then, so now we're going to take the sepia. Now, hang on, where are we? Where's my sepia? Let me just get my sepia. Sepia. Here we go. This is my sepia. So this is, I don't like using black so much. This is a very dark sort of grey, browny colour, and it's ideal to use. So if I was doing something and it's got like a pupil or a dog's eye and it's got quite dark on the inside of the eye, I would use the sepia. I would use the black at the end, but I do prefer to use a mixture of the sepia and say blues and whatever in the eyes especially. So on the fur here, because it's a browny grey, we're going to use the sepia. It's very fits in very well with this colour. So now I'm going where it's, you know, I'm putting in these really darker sections in. So what I'm doing now is I'm reducing this dark patch down even more. So if you look, some of this will, so I'm not going to put this everywhere. So put my fur lines like that, and then I'm not grouping them together as much, except in smaller sections. Okay, so can you see we've got, so I haven't put as much together in there, and I'm using my reference just as a guide. Okay, so then here we've got quite a few grouped together. This is quite dark now, this section. Okay. Again, just release the pressure and fetch in. So these are like smaller clumps now where you got the really dark shadowy bits. When you look, you see we've got these light, but they are sort of smaller clumps, and then we've got these lighter colours in between. So I'm now just darkening off some of these little clumps here with sepia. Same process, sort of close together, and then just less pressure and more spread out when you're coming out into the lighter areas. That. Okay. Okay. Quite a few smaller clump sections here. So each layer you'd start to define a little bit more, so you're adding more detail, as they say. Okay. patch here. And then release the pressure, touching some of it here. And then we got some darker colour here. You see now that's starting to pull together and look like fur. Right then, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to take the cold grey one and I'm looking here. So where the light patches are, I'm now using shading motion and just a little bit heavier pressure. So I'm blending from the in between the light and the dark pieces now. So what that's doing is these edges of the dark bits of fur are getting softer. So they're a bit softer on this side than that. And the lighter area is getting a bit more blended. And then here as well. So we're going to get a, this is where the light is at the top of the head. So I'm putting a little bit more pressure on when I'm shading this time, not too much because I don't want to burnish, I'm blending still, but, and as I say, the grey gives the lighter areas that bit more of a bluier tone. It's not white. Okay, so it's not going to lighten it too much, which is not what we want. I'm using the shading motion, light pressure, well, medium to light pressure, following the direction of form. Make sure I get to the ends there. Again, that's starting to look nice and smooth again now. Tilt it, you can see how the different shades of brown. It's quite dark down there if you look at a different angle. It's because of the lighting on here. I think if I turn this off, it's going to be too dark. But let's just have a look. Can you see it's a bit darker now? So you can see the colours a little bit more there. Okay. So what we'll do now is I'm going to go over once more, but with the I'm going to use the I'm going to use two more layers, sorry, of the burnt sienna, the reddy brown, and then the walnut brown over the real dark areas, just to give it that bit more yellow again. Okay, so the strokes again. So can you see now it's putting in that bit more brown again? Okay, so again, like I said, it's a repetitive. But now, because we've been doing these layers and we've done the blending, can you see how much smoother this is starting now to look? It's not as grainy and you're getting those nice mixtures of browns and colours coming through. It's now starting to look nice and rich. And then once we get the glazes on. Okay, so don't forget, just take the pressure off a bit on the, don't clump as much when you get into the lighter sections. Really nice rich brown now. Gone more or less everywhere, over everywhere now with that reddy brown. Okay, now I'm going to go with the walnut brown for the last time. And this is now building that lovely section there that's really dark up. Okay, And we've got this dark section here, and then again, just lift the pressure off as you're coming into that lighter. Don't cover all of the ready areas up with this brown. We're just going in where it's really, really dark with this side. Okay. It's just in these patches where it's really dark brown. Okay, so we've got the browns in there. Can you see? Really nice. I mean, it looks a lot smoother on here than what it does on there, but this is a grainy paper, but it's Fabriano, so it should be fine. Now then, I'm going to do some glazing. What I'm going to do first is I'm actually going to take I'm going to take a colourless blender this time. Sharpen that. This is the Caran d'Ache one. So it's like a pencil, but that's a colourless blender. And the thing is, now I'm going to be going over all these colours. So I'm blending again, but this time there should be no colour shift. And the thing is, I need to make sure that every so often I stop and clean the tip off this pencil, because the colours are obviously going to. So I'm using light to medium pressure. So I'm not using very heavy pressure because I've still got a couple of layers to put on. But we can get a little bit, we can actually put a little bit more pressure on because we are coming towards the end. Okay. Now shade in motion, following the direction of form. So this is nicely softening in this side. You can see this side's a lot softer, but it hasn't given the colour a colour change. So it's not lightening the colour up. Okay, it's just doing a nice blend, evening out that tooth of the paper. Okay. Keep stopping and getting all the rubbish off the end of the pencil. I'm still holding it quite far back just to stop me putting too much pressure on. Because if you put too much pressure on, it's going to end up burnishing it, and it's just going to kill the tooth of the paper altogether. Okay, so I'm just lightly shading over until it's all nicely smoothing in. So you can see this side is a lot smoother than that side still. So if we go in here now. As I say, it's light to medium pressure this time. So it's a little bit strong pressure. Okie dokie. As I say, if you need to darken up any more, you could just keep going in. And as long as you do light pressure with your blending in between, you should have infinite, you should be able to keep layering and layering and layering. And then once you start to get the depth of colour that you're after, then obviously you can, I mean, this is a lot darker when I look at it than what I do on the camera light. Okay. So clean that off. So now I'm going to have a look at these areas. So like I said at the beginning, if I look at this, we've got an orangey colour up here. So we're going to use that for the, so we're going to use a terracotta. We've got some bluey areas as well, some cool areas there. And then we've also got, on these little areas of light, we've got this purple as well. So down here, in this section, you've got the blue here, and then you've got some purples here as well. So these are the colours I've chosen, but you can use any of these colours as such. Okay. Now, when I buy glazing, we're going to do a shading motion, but we're going to do it very, very lightly. All we're doing is we're not exactly looking to put lay colour down as such. All we're doing is putting a hint. So if you use it, the pencil, or it's flat on its side as you can, and just do a very light layer. and I mean the light layer, all you're doing is giving a hint of that colour, and what it does, it mixes with the colours that are there and it changes it into either a cool tone. So you've got like a warmer tone there and a cool tone there, but you can't, it doesn't look orange or blue as such. And then we've got the purple here, which works really well with browns. Okay, so it's a very, very light touch and a glaze. Okay, so I'm going to start, I'm going to put a little bit of an orangey glaze. So I've got a bit of an orangey glaze here. And then all the way up here, very light orangey glaze. Okay. So I'm using the side of the pencil and a light pressure. It's just adding that little bit of a glaze down there. And then down, right down here, sort of here, I've got this bluey. So I'm using the Delft blue. Again, I'm using it in direction of form. A little bit round here. That's a bit warmer. That's it. The blue there. And then we've got quite a bit of the blue section here in this dark area. We've got quite a bit of the blue. Okay, quite a bit of blue around here. Got a cool tone to it there. Okay, and that's quite a cool tone up there. Okay, and then I've got this. This is Manganese Violet. So this is what I'm going to put in this, in a lot of the lighter areas, just as a glaze, and it just gives it that little bit of a warm colour there for the lighter areas on this fur. Okay, and we've got quite a bit of it here, so it's a warmish tone. So I'm just glazing through this centerpiece here a little bit, and up here as well. Okay, that's it. Glaze that. I don't know if you can see now. It's still looking quite dark under here. Let me sort of swap the lights around a bit. Ooh, turn those ones off. Can you see now how you've got these glazes and these warm tones coming through a little bit? We've got the warm tone through there. Okay, so that's about it. I'm just going to give it another. I'm going to do now is I'm just going to colourless blender. I'll just add it. I'll just put it. That's there. I'm going to resharpen this colourless blender, and then I'm just going to go over one more time, and that is the fur, the brown fur done. Okay, so I'm now putting on a little bit more pressure now, because this is the last. I'm not going to be blending anymore. This is the last layer, so I'm actually now. So this would be classed as a burnishing as such, because what I'm doing is I'm actually putting on, I'm actually blending it now, so it's smoothing right out. So I'm killing the tooth of the paper, because I'm not going to be putting any more layers on. So this is what you usually do towards the end. So, and as you see, you get quite a bit of deposits coming off. So get rid of those. But can you see now there is a definite, that is a lot smoother on this side than that side. So it's smoothed it together, but you've still got the fur lines there showing. Okay, so this is by putting on a little bit more pressure. I'm not holding the pencil right there, but you don't want to be going too hard, because you would end up with something like wax bloom and things like that. So you don't want to spoil it, all your hard work. Okay. around there. So that's that finished off. Take that out, and there we do. We have some really nice. Got some darker tones in there. So I mean, it's the light at the moment. But you can see if I just there, you can see it's quite dark actually. So I mean, this looks a lot darker, but that's the sort of guidance. And as I say, it's not really about the colour, it's more about the fur direction and the depth that you've got. So because you've got the depth there now with all these colour tones building up, I don't know, you probably might see it as well on camera. When you're looking at it here, you can see that this sort of tuft, these are a bit shorter. This is the top of the head. So you can imagine that his eyes are going to come down here. And these are a little bit more sort of less defined in the background. But yes, that's your brown fur. I've lost count of layers there. But as long as when you're blending in between, you do it very lightly with the same pressure as you're using your pencil, so not too heavy, then you will fill the tooth of the paper, but you won't kill it, as they say. So that means you can keep adding more and more colour. Okay, and then the more layers you get and the more different colours, you're going to get all these nice little tones and the little different hairlines that are coming through all the different colours, which makes your work look a little bit more realistic as well. So I hope that's been helpful. So you need to practice your fur method before you start. It's about layering, the pencil pressure, and then the glazing at the end. And these are just some basic colours that are suggested for brown fur, but you can change them or get some colours very similar to what, you know, the colour of your dog is. Reference wise, just use, you just get a picture of a dog and cut down on your thing and just cut down a little piece of fur there. I mean, I can upload this for you as well on the website if you want to use that one as a guide. I don't know how well the colours will come out, but I can do that for you. And then it's just basically circle or square and just literally follow the instructions. Practice and practice. As I say, this is shorter fur, so you can use all the different coloured furs. I'm going to do a black one and a white one because a lot of people struggle with the black and the white, because if you use just limited colours on black, it can look totally flat, and we need it to look thick and depth, quite a lot of depth. So there are quite a lot of unusual colours in black, and then also the white fur as well. White fur is never white. It has lots and lots of other colours in it. So I will do a white fur demonstration and I'll do a black fur demonstration. But just for now, that's the brown one. Okay. Right. Thank you very much. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.